Hey guys, welcome to part 3 of our Codex review for Angels of Death. We've probably come to the most exciting part of this 3-part series. Shawn, 4 new psychic powers for Space Marines. Huge.
Massive. For all Space Marine factions.
4 entire trees even.
4 whole trees.
4 trees.
Would have thought it was April Fool's if you told me that a few days ago.
Not April Fools?
Not April Fool's.
Yeah, right.
Shawn, you've got some things you want to say about...
Look, I just think it's really interesting. Like, obviously, some people have already seen some of these powers, and they're pretty game-changing in what they do. There's mechanics that we've never seen anything of the like before. They're just so different from what we're used to. I think that often players react with a lot of adversity. People are like often, I want to say, scared of change. Do you know what I mean? Like, they see these things happening and they don't really embrace the changes. They just sort of like react negatively and push them away. But, you know, 40k is an ever-evolving game, and I think that obviously this is a very clear sign that it's the end times, right? Things are escalating.
7th edition, I think, to be fair, has consistently broken the boundaries.
Yeah, definitely.
Of what we consider the game to be, you know, 6th, 5th edition. So, 4 new trees. Interesting trees.
Very interesting trees. To be honest, I think there's been a lot of hysteria. There's been a lot of misinformation.
Yep.
A lot of people, decrying the end of balanced 40k as we know it. Who are we kidding?
If we've ever known it.
Exactly. 40k is not a balanced game. There's always going to be something better coming out. Games Workshop, have cottoned on to the idea that there needs to be power creep for them to keep selling stuff.
That's synonymous with every game, though.
Exactly,
like, there's always that happens across every platform and every game. And whenever I've seen these changes, be it in World of Warcraft, SC2, Hearthstone, people react with it's hysteria.
And even if they bring out like 10 new things, and of those 10 new things, 9 are bad and 1's really good, then the 9 bad things don't see play, but that 1 good thing constitutes power creep. So even in games, collectible card games like Magic and Hearthstone, even though a very small percentage of the releases are really good, those really good ones will change the game.
Yes.
So
that's what the meta is.
Exactly. So,
Good points, guys.
Into it.
Let's get stuck into it. So we've got 4 disciplines. We've got the Librarius, Technomancy, we have Fulmination, and we have Geokinesis.
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 Like telekinesis with Earth.
With rocks.
Yeah,
They're
mind
minerals,
control of
Marie.
the rocks. I feel like Magneto already.
Exactly. Let's get started on Librarius, because I know that there was it's the first one, I guess, in the book. Quite a few number of powers here that we wanted to have a chat about. Shawn, I'll take it to you. I think you took quite a few notes on the psychic powers and had some thoughts.
Librarius trees, we'll start with that one, obviously. It's the most balanced one, I think, of the 4 of them. It's a tree that provides a number of good powers across the board, something we don't see in a number of other psychic trees. In particular, like as we go on, you'll notice that the Fulmination and Geokinesis trees have like a massive polarity between the spells you want and the spells that you're going to get a lot of the time. The Librarius provides a few really good powers. Don't get me wrong, there's some insanely good stuff here, but it's balanced all the way through. So the Primaris here is a pretty generic Witchfire. Stat line sort of like very similar to Smite. It's situationally better, situationally worse than Smite. So, and you'll see that actually across all of them. They all have a power that you can kind of relate to Smite and say it's situationally better or worse.
I feel like this tree in particular has a lot of similar powers as other trees that are in the game already.
Yeah, possible. Is there anything that stands out?
Why don't we just go through them and as we go.
Let's cover them off. So we'll start with...
the Primaris is obviously it's just a versatile Witchfire. I think the most interesting part about it is it's just the blast that will kill
AP3 blast.
It's good against the EQ,
18 inches, strength 5, assault 1.
One more strength than Smite, one less strength than Smite.
It's not that special,
it's just generic stuff. We'll move into the big ones. The big ones here being Veil of Time, probably the most off the bat, like the most obvious one. It's basically Fortune for Space Marines. So all these builds we've been talking about with 2-up invols and 2-up FMPs, it's going to be very, very easy nowadays to get a 2-up rerollable invol with a 2-up FMP to back that.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because this is one of those things that, like, Space Marines already had access to precog through divination. So the rerollable save is not something that's new. But
it is new on the character.
Wide. Yeah, exactly.
It's more the fact that when you had a Libby in the past, you didn't want to take saves on those Libbies because it was very hard to get an invol save on them that was adequate, and like having only 2 wounds a lot of the time, and obviously being like at risk of perils you don't want to take wounds on your Libbies. But Veil of Time, obviously, chuck him in your unit with Command Squad, whatever it is, and you now got some really, really hard, very hard to break things. We'll move on from there. Fury of the Ancients. It's a pretty generic Witchfire. There's not a whole lot there that's overly special. It's just a generic beam, strength 6 AP 4. Psychic Fortress, probably, in my opinion, one of the worst spells in the tree. It gives a unit Adamantine Will and a 4-up invulnerable save against Witchfire powers. I just don't see that being that great because generally you got Psychic Defense from the Librarian anyway. But
it's too situational, I feel.
Well, if you had a unit that was vulnerable, like that was outside of your Halo or whatever it was, targets a Psyker, so it's even less versatile. Not a great power. Mighty Heroes. Mighty Heroes is an interesting ability. Jeremy had a few points on Mighty Heroes.
It's one of those things that when you're shooting for your Veil of Time, and you're missing Veil of Time, obviously something like Mighty Heroes is going to be a very sore consolation.
So just to clarify, guys, it is a power that adds +2 to the Psychic Strength, Toughness, Initiative, Attacks.
Yes.
So we're seeing almost a blend of Iron Arm,
Warp Speed,
and Warp Speed, which is interesting in that it's not as efficient as either of those individually, but it blends all the effects in. It's a Warp Charge 1
it's
power.
a consolation price.
You lose the AP, you lose Smash, which is what Iron Arm gives you, which makes your something like a Force Sword makes it AP 2.
Yeah.
But people
and you don't get Fleet either.
No, and people that are already running kind of Force Axes, and I feel like Force Axe is the standout Force weapon.
Yeah.
You didn't need Smash anyway, so that Force Axe going from Strength 5 up to Strength 7, you got from Toughness 4 to Toughness 6. The initiative, if you do have a Force Axe, isn't relevant. But I guess the overall point of this is you get just a general stat increase.
+2 to stuff.
It doesn't matter what weapon you have, whether you've got a Force Stave or a Force Sword. This power is good for the Libby.
And again, Warp Charge 1, nice and easy to cast. I think it's a good power. Psychic Scourge we'll move on to, that's power number 5. This is an interesting one, so it's a Malediction. Target an enemy Psyker within 24 inches. That Psyker rolls 1 die, and you roll 2 dice. If your result is higher, it does some stuff. If their result is higher, it does nothing.
So the stuff is, if you roll higher than them, they take a wound.
It's equal to...
And it's equal to or higher, they take a wound. If you roll incredibly higher than them, then they also lose a psychic power.
Well, by incredibly high, we mean...
3.
You roll
3 points.
high.
Which on 2d6...
But the interesting thing with this power here, right, for me this is probably the standout power of the whole... For all 4 trees, this is one here that really stands out to me. Obviously, we've seen a lot of like Psychic Death Stars. This is a Malediction power, which means you don't need to roll a hit. And while it's active, the enemy Psyker can only manifest Warp Charge on a 6. So in a meta where we see a lot of Psychic Death Stars balling around, often like people try and drop Calexis on those, for example. But if you whiff, or if your Calexis doesn't pay off for it, it dies next turn, then you lose that edge. This allows you to stay on top because not only do you get to deny... It allows you to stay on top because you can shut them out and you can keep them out for the rest of the game by making them only manifest.
It's worth noting that manifesting on 6s is you don't need the 3 or more result. It's just if you just get equal to or higher. You're rolling 2 dice, they're rolling 1.
Yeah.
And then so if your opponent's it's also worth noting that this is a malediction. So if your opponent's unit is invisible,
I said that already.
Oh, you did? Yeah. So you're just going to get it off. You're basically just going to say to them, you're not going to get your spells off.
The other point to make, I guess, that I think is worth just mentioning, most people have probably clicked to it already, but you are targeting an enemy Psyker, so they're likely going to be denying on 5s at least.
Yeah.
Okay, so they've got a better chance of denying it. If they don't, it makes them casting in their turn a lot more difficult.
Sure,
it's
but
a cool power.
if you can force it through, then you basically say, I'm going to have the superior Psychic phase for the rest of the game.
Yep.
And that leads us into this number 6 power, which is Null Zone, which is really interesting because it's like banishment on steroids, works against everything. It's a -2 invul to an enemy unit to a minimum of 6+. Stacks with banishment, as far as I know. It would stack with banishment. So against your Fate Stars or whatever it is, Screamer Stars, you're going to neg them back down to a 5-up invul. It's like, sorry.
This is one of those spells that I really think is good for the game. I mean, I'm a little bit... And this is criticism I'm going to level against the whole array of trees. I'm a little bit annoyed that it's Space Marine only. I feel like there was a bit of room for these trees to just become kind of generalist trees. That
This one in particular.
Yeah, because I think invulns have always been something that... because they're a final word, more or less. Like, if you have an invulnerable save, that's it. You have an invulnerable save. I feel like mechanics like this and kind of there are some things in the game that have phasing mechanics that ignore invulnerables. I think there needs to be more to balance the metagame a little bit.
There's not a lot in the game to remove or ignore an invulnerable save.
As really accessible ones.
Does one of the assassins still have shield breaker, or is that an old edition I'm thinking of? That's not even in the game anymore, is it?
The Vindicare assassin can ignore invulns, but that's just on a per shot basis.
Sure.
It can't deny it for other people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I think the null zone I think is really good for the game, but it's not really good that Space Marines only have access to it. That's my criticism.
Yeah, fair.
That being said, Space Marines are one of the easiest to ally into a lot of
true.
other armies. So again, look, you can include it. A lot of armies that could really use that kind of stuff might not be able to access it.
So just to summarise real quickly on that Librarius one, I think it's the best tree purely because it's got the most versatility, and there's 4 powers in there that I'd be happy to roll in almost any game. I mean, I wouldn't even feel bad about rolling up the Psychic Scourge because he's still going to give him like take a wound sort of thing on a warp charge 1 spell. It's really good, and then there's a few other constellation prizes in there as well. So I think the Librarius is probably my pick of the trees. However, as you're about to go on, you're going to see some powers that are, real meta shifters, real game breakers.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's start on Technomancy. Technomancy, we'll start with the Primaris. Subvert Machine. Okay, so this is... Technomancy tree, really briefly, is all to do with vehicles, mostly. So it's all kind of mitigating and playing around with your vehicles. We have a Malediction. It targets a single enemy vehicle within 18 inches. If you pass the power, you select one of the vehicle's weapons. And again, you have a roll-off with the opponent. So if they roll higher, nothing happens. If the results are drawn, that weapon you have randomly selected only snapfires while that's in effect, which is quite good to mitigate a bit of the damage they do. If you roll higher than them, you effectively can shoot with that weapon.
It's a randomly selected weapon, correct?
It is randomly selected. Yeah. So, look, if you're targeting things like Vindicators and they've got a Storm Bolter on top, or
so it harkens back to Anakira the Traveller from Necron.
Correct, and I think an old Puppet Master used to be a psychic power that existed a long time ago. Harkening back to those days, as you say.
Not a very good power in my opinion. Just because there's too many variables to push through. First you've got to get the power off, then you've got to roll the hit. Oh, sorry, no, it's a Malediction.
No rolls.
Yep. So you don't have to roll the hit, but then you've got to, do this dice roll.
And a randomised weapon.
And a randomised weapon.
It's one of those things that if you have that spell, maybe your opponent will be more careful with their Monolith or their Vindicator, but at the end of the day, it's not that effective. It's one
chances are if you hit a Vindicator with it, its firing arc is not pointed at its own army.
Yeah.
I see a lot of that not being able to be used.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, fair.
Pretty bad.
Power number 1, Blessing of the Machine, Warp Charge 1. We have a Blessing that targets a single friendly vehicle within 24 inches. While the power is in effect, the target vehicle ignores the effects of Crew Shake and Crew Stunned and has Power Machine Spirit. If the vehicle already has Power Machine Spirit, it increases its ballistic skill by 1. In addition, this can be cast by a Psyker that's on a transport, but he can only cast it on his vehicle he's on.
Yep. So it's an okay spell. I'm not too aroused by it, to be honest. I think it's...
It almost seems like it if you're not running Iron Hands, but you want some of their rules.
I'm not that aroused by it either, to be honest. But, look,
how do you feel about the power?
Unfortunately, it's one of those things that, because of the psychic phase happens after the movement phase, you can't even, retrospectively, on a vehicle that was stunned in your opponent's turn, you can't unstun it, because you've already had movement. I mean, you can unstun it and then flat out it. It's just too upside down, I think, this power. I think giving your vehicle Power of the Machine Spirit has some utility for split fire, but I really don't think... Or if you've got Land Raider or something, you can give it
increasing its ballistic skill,
Things like that. A niche power like Power Machine Spirit is something that you would want to build your list around. And if you were building a list around and hoping to get that power, I'd say you were wasting your Warp Charge and your Psychers. It's too counterintuitive.
I'd say if you were to build a list around that, you're taking Iron Hands anyway, and it's mostly irrelevant.
Exactly. So it's just too clunky.
Yeah, the only thing I could see it as being good on is just if you've basically got a Land Raider, and you're going to get full value out of it in the sense you're going to get instant value from your inspiration.
If you have a unit you have to deliver.
Yeah, and then you deny them the stun result next turn. I think it's the only time you'll be casting a spell.
Yeah. Either that or maybe some of the bigger Forge World vehicles, your Spartans and stuff.
Yeah. So the number 2 power in this one's Machine Curse. It's a focus Witchfire that deals with an 80-inch range, which deals D3 Strength 1 AP dash hits with the Haywire special rule to an enemy vehicle. So this is probably the first psychic power we've seen, which is just pure anti-vehicle.
Yep.
There's like the things like there's the in the I believe it's telekinesis. They have that one that makes them get hot.
Yep.
But this is like a direct 100%.
Sure.
Take D3 haywire.
D3 haywire is we're doing something to your vehicle this turn. We're potentially wrecking your vehicle. Most vehicles are 3 hull points.
Yep.
If you're having to get lucky with your D3 roll, you're going to potentially take your unit out. Not bad for Warp Charge 1.
I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. Reforge. Warp Charge 1. Blessing. Single friendly vehicle within 24 inches. You can choose to either immediately recover 1 hull point lost earlier, or repair weapon destroyed, or immobilize result. In addition, the vehicle gains it will not die while the power is in effect. Again, Psycho can cast it on his own transport that he's embarked on. I think that's a good utility to be able to repair a vehicle. Repairing immobilize could be big. There's other ways to do it, potentially.
Sean,
but
what do you think about this spell?
I think that this spell, and largely the tree as a whole, it's something that you'd want to build your list around. Because it's so vehicle-centric, you're only going to roll on that tree if either you have a lot of vehicles or your opponent has a lot of vehicles. And if the inverse is true, then you're not going to get full value out of the tree. So it's clunky, but I can see it having utility, I suppose.
It's got like it's one of those trees that it adds there. Everyone's got Space Marines have got access to this tree. I like, once again, it's one of those things I think is good for the game. I think immobilized for me, as somebody that you look at a game, you look at the mechanics of the game. To me, just taking difficult terrain checks on vehicles and getting immobilized is devastating for a 1 in 6 chance.
especially Space Marine Land Raiders, different from Chaos Land Raiders, not being able to take those dozer blades. An unlucky one on a Land Raider that has cargo you need to deliver.
I think,
but again, I wouldn't roll on this table just to prepare for that.
No, I think it's good. Once again,
that's
good for the game. Having said that, once again. If you are planning that big Land Raider bomb type thing, having this spell up your sleeve obviously allows you to circumvent those really devastating immobilized results that are so ubiquitous in the game with the prevalence of grav. It's one
the only other thing I could see is like allying with Cult Mechanicus, and you've got your Dune Crawlers and stuff like that potentially. If you've got an army like that really utilizes on these things doing stuff, your weapon destroying results being repaired. And you choose to recover it as well, so you don't have to roll a 6 to recover it. Assuming you pass the warp charge, you do it. So that's kind of good.
Yeah, and you get the It Will Not Die roll, so effectively you're recovering 1.33 hull points, because you get your instant hull point and a 1 in 3 chance at another one.
Good point.
It's decent.
Sure. Do you want to cover the power number 4?
Sure. So number 4, which is, I guess, redeems this tree a lot, is called Warp Metal Armor, Warp Charge 2. Warp Metal Armor is a blessing that targets a single friendly unit within 24. If this power targets a vehicle, then that, whilst in effect, that adds +1 to all its armor values. And all the models in the unit. So if it's a squadron of vehicles, everyone gets the result.
Yep.
And if this power targets a non-vehicle unit, then whilst in effect, add 1 to the toughness of all models in that unit. And if that Psycho is embarked on the transport vehicle, he may still attempt to manifest the Psycho power, but may only target the vehicle embarked upon.
Cool. Yep. So just straight off the board, basically, guys, Warp Charge 2, +1 AV or +1 toughness. The first thing that comes to mind is AV-15 Land Raiders.
Hello.
Sweet. Again, a unit of Contempted Dreads, potentially from Iron Hands, being armor 14. Again, expensive, but that unit is going to punch like a truck, and it's going to take a punch. Sean, where do you see that power being used most?
That's probably the 2 main places I would see it being used.
Yep.
You've covered that pretty well already.
+1 toughness, potentially on a biker unit being T6, immune to instant death.
Centurions as well, maybe.
Centurions, cool. So
toughness is an ability that you're never going to have nothing to cast +1 toughness on.
Fair to say. Some stuff, stuff that is T5 that goes onto that threshold of never being instant death. Again, Iron Hands always getting that feel no pain, right? So you've got a command squad, as you were saying, on bikes. Suddenly T6 means that 2 up or 3 up feel no pain is you're not taking that away from them. I think that's great. I don't know if I'd roll a tree on it, but I like it. I like it. Yeah. Fury of Mars is power number 5, Warp Charge 1. Effectively, guys, this is a beam. It's 18 inches. It's Assault 1 Haywire.
It's bad.
You don't rate it?
Oh, well, we're looking at beams.
One Haywire shot.
I guess we'll get into this. We'll look at, we'll make the point after number 6, but we are seeing a lot of Haywire here, aren't we?
Yeah. So number 6 being Machine Flint. This is like an amped up version of the Machine Curse. It's a warp charge 2, 18-inch range. Target vehicle takes D3. Immediately loses D3 hull points. So no need to roll haywire there. And then for each hull point lost, any units within 12 inches. A single enemy within 12 inches takes D6 strength for AP6 hits with rending for each hull point lost.
And you can choose
probably
a different
the best way to explain that. Sorry, so it's the vehicle loses D3 hull points, and then an enemy unit within 12 takes D3 6.
D6. So you roll your D3. If you get 2 hull points, the vehicle loses 2 hull points, and then you get 2 effects of a D6 strength 4 AP6 rending hits. So you could say, all right, I'm going to put D6 shots on this tactical squad near the vehicle. Then on the other side, you've got a scout squad. I'm going to put another D6 hits on the scout squad.
Yep.
So you could be targeting and hitting lots of things at the same time.
Yep.
But more importantly, that's another spell that can put hull points on vehicles.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, I think that covers it quite well. You may have a bit of utility with people that are deploying vehicles and infantry units around them. Almost like the old, was it the Tesla weapons used to arc? A little bonus effect. Is it going to win you a game? Not on the D6 strength 4 hits.
Yeah.
If you're coming against a lot of vehicles that you need to put down, D3 hull points is okay for Warp Charge 2.
It's interesting.
The tree doesn't blow my mind. I like the +1 AV because that can make certain things quite tough. Apart from that, I don't know.
I'll be honest, I'm pretty excited about this tree. Having played Psychic Stars for a while, one of the things you notice you lack is that the majority of Witch Fires and Psychic Powers don't work against vehicles. And so when I'm running around with 16 Warp Charge and 4 or 5 Psychers, I still can't deal with someone's Land Raider or Imperial Knight. I just can't put damage on it. This tree, and obviously any Space Marine faction army can roll on it. This tree now gives me the options to say, this guy's running a mech list. I have answers. Yeah. So I just feel really good that I have that in my arsenal. It's not a great tree overall, but I think that if you do run into an armoured battle company or something like that, you would be going, thank goodness I can roll
once again, I think this is just good for the game. Anything that effectively limits the prevalence of build order losses is good for the game. So by build order losses, I mean it's a game where you look at your army and you look at your opponent's army, and you know that you're going to win or lose that game just based on what you've got across the table. So as Shawn alluded to, things like Imperial Knight spam can just result in a build order loss for an army that just can't deal with it.
Yep.
This tree is a counter to that. Multiple
and
effects.
You don't roll on it unless you need it.
Exactly, and Haywire ignores AV, so AV 13, AV 14 vehicles doesn't matter. Yeah, it gets better. So there you go.
Cool. All right, let's get a move on to Fulmination. Shawn, I'll let you cover a couple of these because I know you had a good look at these.
This is Smite Mark III. It's an 18-inch range, strength 5, AP4, assault 6. So 2 less AP, 1 more strength, and an extra 2 shots.
Yep.
Nothing special.
That just is what it is.
The number 1 is Electro Shield. Is a blessing targets a Psyker and gives him a 3-up invul save. As we sort of spoke about a bit earlier on, Psykers aren't generally something you want to take wounds on. So getting a 3-up invul, I'd rather just why don't you just go for Warp Surge? I would never want to really be tanking wounds on my libbies. Number 2, Electro Pulse is a Nova Power, which is 9-inch range, strength 1 Haywire attack. So it kind of reminisces back from the old what's it called?
Technomancy trees.
Yeah, so it could have been a misprint.
Yeah, just to repeat that. So it's if you didn't hear it, if you didn't hear that correctly, just the range, just the Nova 9-inch Haywire Nova.
Yeah, it's a 9-inch Haywire
Strength
Nova.
My question is, when do you have a Libby within a librarian within 9 inches of multiple vehicles to make benefit of a Nova? Personally, never.
When you cast Electro Displacement, that's when.
I'm sure we'll cover that.
If Araman could roll in this tree, it would be pretty good because then he could just cast it 3 times and kill the noise. But
that would be interesting.
That would be decent.
Yeah, fair.
Or maybe who knows?
Who knows? Well, it's the end times.
Yeah,
things are going crazy. Number 3 is Lightning Arc. It's a Warp Charge 2 spell. It's a Witch Fire, range 18, strength 5, AP4, assault D6, special rule, lethal discharge. After this attack has been resolved against a target, roll a dice for every other enemy unit within 6 inches of the target. On a roll of a 4 or more, that unit suffers D6, strength 5, AP4 hits that are randomly allocated.
I think you had a lethal discharge earlier, didn't you, Jeremy?
I've had a few if you've been watching me closely, this video series. But another pretty mediocre spell, I'd say.
For a warp charge too, I want more value for that. Sorry.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of these powers are stuck at the AP4 and AP5 values. So when you're playing against another Marine army, you're not really necessarily putting out a whole lot of damage with them.
Not enough damage, just not enough there, I don't think.
Fist of Light is an interesting one. It doesn't look too good off the bat, but Jeremy pointed out earlier on that there may be quite a bit of utility to it. It's a Warp Charge 1, Blessing, targets a Psyker. The Psyker adds 1 to both his strength and attacks. In addition, for every hit in close combat, that unit suffers an additional 2 Strength 5 AP-hits. So, Libby's, as we said, axe, pistol, you're going to have like 3 to 4 attacks, plus 1 from the power, 4 to 5 attacks, 6 on the charge.
Yeah.
They should hit with 4 regularly.
Hit for 3, 4, an extra,
An extra 6 strength 5 attacks.
It'll probably amount to about a third or increase in damage for Libby's, which is pretty decent when they're IDing. So, often Libby's a strength 5 with the Force Axe.
Yep.
So where they might have 3 attacks, if you've got your 2 base plus the pistol, 3 attacks, strength 5, so often winning on 3s.
Well,
you've
got become strength 6, so you'd be IDing.
So now you're 4 attacks winning on 2s. I think it's pretty decent. Like if you're in combat with a Libby, there's no reason why you shouldn't be throwing a couple of dice with that spell.
I think that's one of those consolation prizes for not rolling up to number 6, which we're about to get to.
Yeah.
Did you want to go through the next couple, Jack?
Yeah, sure. So number 5, we have a Warp Charge 2 power. It is a Blessing. It targets a single unit within 18 inches. Now, what we're going to do with this power is we're going to move a unit of ours up to 18 inches. Okay, so it can't be used on anything that is swooping, zooming, or locked in combat. So one of your, unengaged units can then immediately move.
So it's a bit like we're talking about
same as levitate.
Levitation.
Or
It's a better version of levitate. Yeah, it's worth saying you can't charge after you use this power, but and you also count as moving.
Correct. So you're not going to get to shoot those heavy weapons, or you're going to be snap firing heavy weapons.
Unless you have your Catapractic Terminator captain in there.
Correct.
It's not on purpose.
Not bad.
Absolutely. Good point there. And you do move through terrain or over terrain as if it was open ground. So that's...
It has a lot of utility.
Well, let's read the next
I don't
one.
mind it, but for Warp Charge 2...
It's sounding mediocre now, but we'll see how we feel after that we read.
Electro Displacement. Guys, you may have heard of this. This is one of those hysteria powers, I think it's fair to say. A lot of people lost their minds when they...
So don't go crazy. It's okay. It's called like progression, natural progression of a game. The Forces of Chaos are getting more stronger. The Imperium has to fight back just as hard. Here we go. Prepare yourselves. Go to your loins.
Alright, we've got Warp Charge 2, we've got a Blessing, and we've got it targets a unit of yours that is not a vehicle, and is within 24 inches. Now the wording on this is quite interesting. Remove all models in the target unit except for one. Swap your Librarian with that one model. The rest of the Psyker's unit then deploys within 6 inches and unit coherency of the Psyker, and the remaining models from the other unit deploy within the same terms of their existing unit. It's effectively a unit swap. Now, if either unit was locked in combat, meaning that you can cast it on a unit in combat, the displaced unit is now locked in combat. So you can actually use it to swap your Libyan Librarian out of combat and another unit in, or the other way around. So people seem to be really angsty about this power. They don't like the idea of it happening.
I think what's the most interesting element of that part of this power is that you're allowed to charge afterwards.
That's my next point. Yeah.
So, Jared, what are the implications of that?
Look, all sorts of stuff. I guess you can be shuffling a unit to prepare a charge, or shuffle a unit, as we said, to get out of a charge. But guys, thinking beyond that, we've got stuff like a drop pod coming down in the enemy's deployment zone, and then you having the option of switching another unit out for that unit, which can then charge.
Yeah, you can't stop the drop pod, obviously, because it's a non-vehicle unit.
Correct.
But you can stop whatever comes out.
So you're looking at a squad of tactical marines dropping down. It doesn't seem like a great threat. You swap them out suddenly for a unit of, say, Honour Guard with some power weapons, or you might have, an Assault Centurion squad. Wolfen, a lot of versatility.
Very good.
It's just a power that's just too easy to build around. You know what I mean? You can take a few units of scouts, infiltrate them, scout them up. You're 12 inches away. You swap, you charge. It's just
Infiltrate's even better, in fact, because you don't have a risk of scatter. You put your unit where you want
the assassin that just infiltrates next to an enemy unit within an inch? Yep. It's like, I'm on top of you.
And I think it's important to note here, guys, we didn't mention it earlier, but these powers are not only taken by Codex Space Marines, your Space Wolves, your Blood Angels, your Grey Knights have access to these as well. So you can cast them on your Space Wolves Psychers and swap your Wolfen out.
It's pretty
if your run and charge isn't quite satisfactory for you.
So my big power play that I want to use with this is I'm going to use Karamazov, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap my scouts in and then get Karamazov just to bomb them because they're in combat. That's how I'm going to use it.
Cool.
It'll be pretty funny.
Well,
I see a lot of interesting plays here.
You had some points, Jez.
Oh no, just well, obviously it's also got you've got the ability 5, so the what's it called? Magnetic Kinesis. So you can, if you don't manage to get any kind of scouts infiltrating up, or all your plans get foiled, your drop pod doesn't work, whatever, so they intercept the tactical squad, you can just fly one of your units up and then swap them in the
throw a unit, swap them over. Look, you'd be throwing units all over the board.
There's so many. It's so hard to play around this, and this is where I've said that there's been some things that I feel have been good for the game. I feel like this is not good for the game because it's not interactive. Your opponent, it's really hard for your opponent to interact when you're just calling the shots.
I don't know. I like it. I think it'll be interesting to see it used. I think it'll be interesting to see opponents try and play against it. It's gonna.
I think it'll be interesting to see.
It's gonna mix things up.
I think it'll be interesting to see if it's allowed in most competitive scenes.
That's a fair point as well. I know that.
To be honest, I think it's very easy to play around. I think that there'll be a lot of hysteria just because.
Sorry, first you said that people can't play around it.
No, I mean it's not interactive in that you
can't stop it.
You can't stop this play.
It would be interesting if you could choose to intercept a unit that was swapped in this way, maybe give an opponent some way to interact with this being a thing.
That's what
Is that what you're referring to? You kind of just have to let them do it.
So they pull their power play. But you can just scream.
You can try and deny the witch.
Well, you can throw your dice, but at the end of the day, I think that a lot of players will realise, and this is where obviously competitive, or let's just say players that are trying to think outside the box, trying to counter these plays will get rewarded. If you feel that this play is going to be penetrating your metagame wherever you're playing, then just put a couple of cheap units into your army, screen the front of your army. So that if your opponent
is very good for that. Chaos
cultists. If your opponent is going to pull a first turn charge on you, let them charge a 50-point unit.
I think it's still very fresh, and we'll see some really interesting users of this come out.
I was going to say as well, both these powers still also synergise with the Electro Pulse. The one we were saying it's hard to get in range. It's the 9-inch range Nova power with the Haywire. These obviously allow it to happen a lot easier. So.
You can do that. That can be your big play. Pull off the Novas, the Haywire Nova.
The Haywire Novas? No, my big play is Karamazov. That's going to be fun. That's a shenanigan right there.
Alright guys, I think that covers this tree in particular. Geokinesis.
Jezza for Geokinesis. What do you got?
What do we got?
Have a quick squiz of it. So guys, we've got so this obviously Geokinesis, we're looking at manipulating the Earth. Moving the Earth. So Chasm is the Primaris. 2 Warp Charge Primaris. Chasm is a psychic power that targets an enemy unit within 18 of the Psycho that is not locked in combat. All models in the enemy unit must immediately take a dangerous terrain test with no armor saves allowed. Invulnerable saves still allowed. And my nose is running.
That's alright. So it's pretty good for clearing out big hordes of like Orc boys or something like that. You can drop that
it says the last line is this psychic power has no effect on swooping or zooming units. Jade, you can take over for me here, but thanks for that opportunity. But unfortunately, I didn't. That's not a very for a 2 warp charge spell. Not great, is it?
It's a 1 in 6 chance of a model taking a wound.
Of an AP2 wound. So it's effectively like having an AP2, Strength 2, something like that. Hits the whole unit spell.
Can be good, situationally good. Anything that's like it's probably very good in something like Eldar. Things that have like rely on cover saves. Anything that's high toughness.
Good against high toughness with saves.
Yeah, that's
absolutely. If you're going to roll up the tree anyway, you're not going to be bad about having it as an option. But you wouldn't swap a power out for it necessarily. First power on the actual tree, we have Earthblood. Earthblood being a blessing targeting a friendly non-vehicle character within 18 inches. The target immediately regains D3 wounds lost earlier in battle, and it gets will not die. So you're looking at potentially getting back 4 wounds in that turn alone.
D3.33 wounds.
Yeah. Yep.
So now
single warp charge. I think that's good to have.
Why not? We see like there was a lot of people were using like Life Leech is a decent spell in Biomancy. Doesn't have as much use because you need to actually get the Witchfire off and get the wound.
It's harder to use.
Yeah, this is a lot easier to use and it's going to be a lot higher ceiling.
When you're throwing things, target a single friendly non-vehicle character within 8 inches. throw a few wounds back into your Dread Knight, or anything like that.
Insane.
Your Centurion star with Drago. Drago's
anything that's like hard to wound. It's like it's one of those things. If you've got a star and you've got these builds now where you've got these 2-up roll involves with FMP and whatnot, when they leak through a wound, it's almost like a mini victory unto itself.
Yeah.
And then if you just turn and just slap him down like, nah, I'm having D3 back. And it's like, sorry. Not sorry.
That's pretty simple, guys, so we'll move on. It's good for its obvious reasons. Scorched Earth is coming up as number 2 with a single warp charge. Malediction, targeting a point on the battlefield. So this is interesting where you're not targeting a unit, so you're targeting a point within 24 inches of the Psyker. Choose the point where the power is manifested. So again, you're pointing at a particular area on the table. Each unit within 6 inches of that point suffers a Strength 5 AP 4 hit with ignores cover that are randomly allocated. In addition, all terrain, including open ground within 6 inches of that point, is treated as dangerous terrain.
Not a huge fan of this power. I really felt that these shots needed to work as more of a barrage mechanic, but they don't. They still originate from the Psyker. When I first read it, I thought maybe this is something you can use to try and poke vehicles in the rear with the Strength 5 hits, but it doesn't even work like that.
I mean, they're randomly allocated, so you might not be able to put a tanking character at the front of the unit to defend, but against the vehicle, you're right. Sure. I assume it hits on the front armour.
I see this power as being... I reckon this power could have been good if it didn't have the random allocation and was a barrage mechanic. Because it's not that many hits, it's not going to break an army, but just having the capacity to throw a couple wounds in the rear, everyone loves that.
Yeah.
Again, AP4, I find that these trees really consistently bring average AP.
This spell is there's another spell similar to this in the same tree, but it's decent in that you can target points and hurt things like out of line of sight models.
Yeah. It also means that you can't jink against it. It ignores cover anyway, so that's actually relevant.
What does it say? It says...
Yeah, so it's an interesting power. I mean, it's something that I thought was pretty average. I don't think you'd be rolling it up too often, even though it is only a warp charge.
Because it's a malediction. It's because it's not a shooting
fire.
attack. You can hit things you can't see. So I believe it does allow you to kill things out of line of sight. So if you've got a unit of scouts that are holding an objective or whatever it might be, it lets you clear them out with ignores cover. It's got some value.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. 3 Landquake. Single warp charge again. Malediction, enemy units, targets all enemy units within 18 inches, I think is important. So it's almost like a Nova Malediction. When this power is in effect, the targets move as though they were in difficult terrain. Furthermore, whilst the power is in effect, the targets cannot run, turbo boost, or move flat out.
This is like an old school Thunderclap with Thunder Fury proccing. This is like, you're not going anywhere, buddy. I got you.
It is an AoE snare.
Yeah,
I suppose
it's like roots. AoE roots.
I think it'd be pain for some armies.
Really good against a lot of armies. I mean, we've seen the trees here. Some of these trees, particularly the last one we looked at, Fulmination, give you a lot of mobility. If you're stacking Geokinesis with some of these other mobility powers, just to be able to get in front of someone's army and then just say nothing is going to get away from me here, like I've got you. That's very powerful.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people when they first see this spell, they think of a defensive mechanic. Like you think about the Tower Relic that allows you to do the same thing and kind of keep your opponents away. I think a better way would envisage this spell for Marines as an offensive ability. So you could drop pod, you could gate, you could use the other tree.
This coming out of drop pod will negate a lot of the drop pod centric list's biggest weaknesses, which is lack of mobility. It's going to keep your enemies in range. Yeah, so normally if you drop like a pod of some sort of power star, your opponent will leave you alone and kind of laugh at you as they're running away.
I think it also helps with preventing those, jet bikes that we were saying before on the turn 5, not being able to turbo boost halfway across the table. Potentially, it really, really helps just secure that last turn. It
protects your backfield. It actually just holds your backfield for you because it just keeps them away from it. It keeps them in their field. Yeah,
it's literally just like a thunderclap.
It's a cool power.
It's really cool. The idea of it's really cool, I think.
Yeah, sure.
That's one of those powers you classify as being really good for the metagame. Is that right?
I just think it's cool. I just the old days of running in your Keeper of the Grave in Warcraft 3 and you pop the ultimate.
You're still thinking about Thunder Fury, aren't you?
I'm thinking about Warcraft.
Alright guys, we'll move on to phase form, which is power number 4. Warp charge, single warp charge again. Blessing, targeting a single friendly unit within 24 inches. When the power is in effect, this is really, really good. The unit has moved through cover, cool. All of its weapons has ignore cover, very cool. And ultimately, the unit now does not need line of sight in order to attack an enemy unit in the shooting phase, as long as the target is in range. Very, very cool.
It gets better. You read the first line and you start getting moving on to the next. You're like, oh shit.
Moves through cover,
What's the
that's
next spell?
okay. Ignores
Then you
cover,
see
that's
the
pretty
ignores
good.
Cover. Then you
It's
see.
perfect timing on steroids.
Yeah, it's perfect timing with the. What's
Very
that
good,
thing
very
that
good
the Grey Knight
comparison.
purgation guys used to have?
Oh, they could. Well, it's the same as like your Tyrant Guard, the Hive Guard that can shoot.
The Hive Guard.
SMS. It's SMS mixed with everything. It's
Ignores cover.
It's SMS with ignores cover. It's on
Again,
steroids.
looking at things like your Grav Star, no more said. You don't even need line of sight, let alone ignoring the cover. It's a good power. It's Warp Charge 1. You're happy to roll that, I think, 100% of the time.
It's just, as we said, perfect timing on steroids. You can cast it on an other friendly unit, which alleviates a lot of issues with perfect timing. It means that things like, just a single, like a Vindicator, you can just give your Vindicator ignores cover for that one turn if you really want it, or you can cast it on a different unit that's got more, you might want to cast it on your plasma guns. There's just so much versatility, or if you're running, as you said, like a big shooty star, just obviously that's the no-brainer.
All sorts of stuff.
I'm starting to change my mind about thinking, Librarius was the best tree. This tree is pretty bonkers so far.
Geokinesis is got a few people on the edge of their seats.
Quaking.
And so Warp Quake, good segue.
Oh, Warp Quake.
Got us rocking out.
Warp Charge 1. Guys, this power is a Witchfire. You target either a single building or a single piece of ruins terrain within 24 inches. Now, different effects. So if you target a building, you roll a dice, 1 to 3 glancing hit, 4 to 6 penetrating hit. It's a cool power. Personally, I don't see buildings used in games often, so I don't think I would get use out of it from my experience. But if you were coming across a fortification or a bastion, I guess there's some use there.
Yep.
However, if you targeted a piece of ruins terrain, which we do see on tables quite often, roll a dice for each unit that is even partially within the ruins. On a 4 or more, the unit suffers D6, Strength 6, AP dash hits that are randomly allocated. Shawn, I know you had a gripe with this particular power. How would you like to see it work?
Better. It's not good. I don't think it does enough. It just doesn't do enough. The glaring lack of power there is that it doesn't have ignores cover. So anything that you would want to be hitting that when they're in cover, you want to be breaking through you don't want to have a cover save.
They've got a ruin save.
Exactly.
If they're in ruins, they've got a 4-up save.
It specifically dictates you must target a unit in ruins.
How are they getting a cover save while the ruins are shaking? Maybe they're hiding in the ruins that's causing damage to them. Makes sense.
Yeah.
What
do you think?
I would never choose to use it. I don't see myself.
Never choose to use it.
Never.
Strength 6 is
Well,
not.
I can't really fault that.
What's it called? My Sky Shield landing pad that I'll be using for spell 6 is on 1 hull point. Not going to let you cast that on me.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Done.
On to the biggest and baddest power in the whole release.
Hold on to your pants, boys. This is This is destroying people's hobby and ruining worlds.
I've seen videos. I've already seen videos of the future where people
burning their armies,
just because one power was released. Settle down, guys. It's all okay. You'll adapt. The game will get better as you were.
Or bolt down your terrain. We have Shifting Worldscape. It's a Warp Charge 3 power, so right away it's more difficult to get off. If you're running a Conclave, probably not that difficult to get off. Safe to say about all the powers here. Alright, I'm going to read this out word for word as it is in the book because it's quite interesting. Shifting Worldscape is a psychic power, targets a single terrain feature within 24 inches of the Psyker and in their line of sight. The terrain feature must be one that cannot be physically picked up. That can be physically picked up and placed in a different location on the battlefield. Move the terrain to an area of open ground anywhere on the battlefield within 24 inches of its starting position, so long as it is more than 1 inch away from any other models or other terrain feature after the location is complete. Cool. So moving terrain, interesting.
Yep. Next paragraph.
Any units that have all of their models on the piece of terrain are moved with it. If a unit has only a portion of its models on the terrain feature, then the models that occupy the terrain piece are immediately moved off it by their player in the same manner as a model disembarking from a vehicle, treating the edge of the terrain as an access point and ending the move within 6 inches 6 inches of that terrain. Models moved in this way must then take a dangerous terrain test. Alright, so what we've got effectively, guys, is the ability to move terrain and move your opponent's models either with that terrain or off to the side, leaving them out of cover. Again, look, there's been a lot of thoughts on this one, so let's take this from a rational point of view. What do you think?
My first thoughts were to get in touch with all the TOs in my local gaming community and offer to supply terrain for their events so that I could fit my entire
I'll just be buying up liquid nails from Buddies.
I've seen a few people actually say
gluing a terrain down.
Velcro them down.
I really want to take this book down at GW and just go play on their Roma battle boards and then just pick up one of the tiles and just shift the whole tile across.
I'm gonna have my hobby case, I'm gonna have my measuring tape, my dice, and I'm gonna have a little chisel. So I'm just gonna chisel off terrain and be able to move it.
What's interesting, guys, look, let me just take something away from the whole metagaming.
Let's get back to earth. Let's get back down the ground here.
Just want to take something away from the whole metagaming discussion of the armorless process and say, guys, if you do use this power and you are going to be messing about with ruins or terrain and potentially opponents' models, be careful. We know a lot of TOs and we know how much work everyone puts into their tables. It shouldn't need to be said, but people get a little bit in the moment when they're able to exploit rules like this and throw stuff around. So, guys, it's an interesting power in the way that it interacts with other people's models.
Have they released a Magneto model for X-Men yet? Because I want to model up my next living.
I believe they do. I believe
Magneto.
Night Miniatures have
bridges and carry them over.
Those Imperial Guard Psychers that have those mono.
Cyclops.
They kind of look a little bit like Magneto in a way.
I doubt
Cyclops.
Not really, more like Cyclops.
Yeah, fair.
Anyway, guys, so the effect on the game, how would you...
This allows you to take any piece of terrain and turn it into your own personal Land Raider, and it's going to give you guys inside a cover save.
Good for the meta, Jeremy?
Not so much.
No.
Not so much. The 24-inch move on turn 1, it effectively allows you to deploy anything. Maybe you have a Tech Marine there as well. It's got a 3-up cover save. And then you literally just gate
bolstered ruins.
A bolstered ruin. You just gate this ruin around the board for the duration of the game. You can assault out of it. There's no restrictions on assaulting. And it's 24 inches, and it just gets placed. You don't even have to roll a scatter or anything. Yeah,
so the big deal here is a lot of you might be thinking, well, okay, so just to clarify, Jarrod mentioned about moving your opponent's units. We're identifying a power play here where you put your own Death Star on a piece of terrain, move this piece of terrain in, as Shawn said, without scattering, and then assault. So it's 24-inch movement and then assault.
On turn 1.
And then we might be thinking, well, that's assuming you can fit this unit on a piece of terrain. What if you plan a board that has no terrain? What if you plan a board with small forests where you can't fit your 10-man Death Star? Shawn, we have an answer to that problem.
If it fits, it sits.
If it sits, it fits. Jarrod, your turn. You passed that question. How do we alleviate this problem of if the board doesn't have a piece of terrain, our strategy won't work?
You take a Sky Shield landing pad.
Bring your own terrain.
Thanks, Jarrod.
Sorry, guys.
You already said that when you were doing Power number 5.
BYO.
And to be fair, it would be really good, and I expect to see this FAQ'd so that potentially terrain that you've purchased as part of your army doesn't count. But that hasn't been done yet, and I suspect it will be a while before it does. It's
not locked in yet. Some of the conjecture came from, in the description of the Sky Shield landing pad, it says that it's an unusual terrain type, keyword being terrain. So it's a piece of terrain.
Sure.
But whether or not that's like,
rules as intended or rules as written.
So it could be, fortifications could be considered not considered terrain because they're part of an army.
Yeah.
So
they take up a slot in an army list.
It opens up a whole bag of worms though. Like I've played a number of games where I've used like my Dreadnoughts for example, and they'll be like on some ruin, and you just put your dice there to indicate where you're like, oh, you know where it is. Do you know what I mean? Now, does that mean like, as you made an example with all the trees, can I just like find a rock and just throw a whole bag of dice in this rock and go, yeah, my models are on there? Like, I just see this power as being a really sort of like edgy.
I think if tournaments allow it, we're going to have to use a little bit of common sense and a bit of discretion when applying this particular power.
Common sense ain't that common though.
Well, correct.
I just think it's an unnecessary power. Like,
yeah.
I mean, when we think of space, when we think of like librarians, obviously, like it conjures images of different kind of sci-fi films we've seen. We've seen those kind of, those scenes where you've got like it could be X-Men or something controlling
landscape
like, nature,
shifting type,
or Bioshock when they're big kind of telekinetic powers. But do we really kind of get the idea of someone just moving like a forest or moving like a lake?
Well,
like it just
happens
doesn't.
in Lord of the Rings.
I don't know.
Look, ultimately, I think it's interesting. I think people will want to play around with it. I don't know if people are going to enjoy playing against it. Two main uses, as we said. You're going to either move pieces of terrain with your own models to put them closer to combat or move them further away from combat, or you're going to mess with somebody. Your unit of scouts has one model not quite in the ruins. I'm going to move the ruins away, and you're just going to have to jump out and stand in the open. A couple of different uses, which I think
that was interesting is that it makes no reference there to objective markers. So does that mean the objective marker stays or goes with the ruin? Like, can I just last turn shenanigan your unit away from that objective?
I would say the objective moves with it.
I would say it doesn't. Because another.
Well, there we go. We've already got a point of contention, like common sense. Like,
well,
it's
not
common.
says that models move. It's like, well, if it's moving the model, is it moving the objective?
Well, objectives aren't models. Anyway, it's a whole.
I'm sure we could do a whole video on this.
It's
power
a massive can of worms. It's a really interesting power. It's obviously going to open the doors to a whole plethora of shenanigans and arguments. It's fair to say. So we'll see how it pans out. Again, that's a power that I'd be interested to see how the ruling bodies decide to FAQ that.
Yeah, like
if they FAQ it.
And like, you know, I guess like groups of people, gaming groups, and just like institutions that have done kind of like FAQs and stuff have changed powers like invisibility. With
ITC, there's the amendment.
The addendum for the invisibility. A power like this is a lot more toxic potentially than invisibility is.
Definitely.
So I have no doubt that bodies like that might just say, look, let's add a few little caveats. Maybe can't do it on your own piece
terrain.
of
Or
terrain,
ultimately, it might be a case of consider all terrain to be affixed to the board, and that actually negates all the rules there anyway. It does stipulate, obviously, that it needs to be removable terrain. If a tournament organiser wants to say the terrain is placed where it is and is not movable, that's their discretion as well. Yes. I see a couple of ways where people might mitigate this from being,
you could 100%
from being an issue
just
anyway.
glue all the terrain down and say, sorry, not this
you
board
could
has
do that,
no
but then does
terrain.
that mean you get to re-roll the 6? Because rolling a 6 is a whiff.
True.
Maybe you do.
True.
Anyway,
guys, so just quickly, Shawn, standout tree for you after all things considered. You're still a fan of Librarians?
Funnily enough, Librarians seem really good at first, but after talking about that formation discipline and just seeing some of the combo plays you can do there, obviously you're looking for the Electro Displacement spell, but again, like many of the trees we see, unless you get that power you really want, like whether it's Endurance or Invisibility, unless you get that power, the other ones are kind of mediocre. So I think that if I'm running like one Psyker only, like one level 2, I'm going to look at Fulmination. The Librarius tree.
Yep.
If I'm going to run a Conclave or something that's going to give me like Tigurius, something that's going to give me more reliable powers, I'll be looking over at the Fulmination tree.
Second question I have for you: would you roll these trees above the rulebook trees always?
Situational. There are some times where I may want to build a list around specific powers, i.e. Endurance or Sanctuary or Invisibility, but there are other lists that would be equally as powerful that would focus on these ones here as well.
Absolutely. Jeremy, same question. Out of the 4 disciplines, what do you think is going to see the most play? What do you think you like?
Density of quality is definitely in Librarius. And just really good powers there, both defensive and offensive. So I think Librarius is extremely solid, but obviously the big meta-changing powers we see in the latter trees. I think, to be honest, I think we'll be seeing all of them. I think we'll be seeing Libby Conclaves. I think we'll be seeing Tigurius seeing a lot of use because he can reroll his spells.
Yeah. Libby Conclaves have been good for a long time. They're now better. So it's made a good thing better.
Yeah.
Tigurius is just...
I'll put the question to you.
Yeah,
What's your favourite tree?
I do like the Librarius. I think it's got a lot of it's got a lot of buffs and a lot of debuffs. But again, look, to be honest, that Electro Displacement power on its own is pretty juicy.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd chase a tree for it. Again, if you've got a single level 2, you don't want to throw 2 dice and just hope for a 6. If you've got a Conclave, or if you've got 2 or 3, or you've got maybe allied some Grey Knights in, I would go for some Electro Displacement if I have a unit I want to be throwing into combat.
Yeah. What do you rate better, the Electro Displacement or the Warp Worlds?
The Worldscape?
Worldscape, not Warp Worlds, it's not the MTG, sorry.
I prefer this. I prefer the Electro Displacement.
More reliable, I think, isn't it?
More reliable and less unlikely to frustrate an opponent.
Less unlikely to create an opponent, and less chance of your opponent gluing all the terrain down after the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want that glue going on your models. Correct. that little nails. All right, we'll just wrap up. I just wanted to kind of say, let's wrap up. I mean, we've discussed a lot of stuff. Let's just isolate the power plays here. There's been a lot of formations and things. We've discussed some new units, new spells. What are we going to see penetrate from this book into the metagame?
I personally expect Iron Hands to be huge. The reason why, reliable feel-no pains, the ability to have will not die and take sort of those tank-centric formations or sort of detachments. And I also think that they mesh it well with a lot of those powers, in a lot of different ways. Re-rolling your invuln saves, negative to other people's invuln saves. They're going to be hard to remove off the table. So for those sort of Maelstrom and objective-based missions, they're going to be a pain.
Yep.
Totally agree, Shawn.
Yeah. Jarrod's covered my main one. I think there's still builds there with White Scars. White Scars have always been very prominent, particularly in the uncomp meta, in the worldwide meta. They're still good. They've probably got better, especially with the addition of that fulmination tree, when you can start shenanigan around your fast scouting bikes, and then blinking and charging. There's some big plays there to be made, I think. What about yourself, Jeremy?
I think the Cataphracti captain is going to see play. I think he's the dark horse of this review. I think the Contempt Dreadnought's pretty expensive but solid. I don't know how much play they'll see. I think some people could make them work with the Power Dish Machine Spirit shenanigan in Iron Hands.
Yep.
I think another dark horse that will benefit from this psychic trees are Grey Knights. Grey Knights don't have access to a lot of the premier trees at the moment. They don't have access to biomancy. They do have telepathy, but they get, as far as we know, with the recent White Dwarf errata basically saying that all of the Space Marine codexes count as faction SM will basically mean they get access to this tree.
Yep.
And I think Grey Knights will benefit from that versatility.
I think it'd be fair to say Imperium in general has just gotten better.
Well. Yeah.
Imperium, whether that be running, a combination of the Space Marine type armies, being Grey Knights, Blood Angels, Dark Angels, and Space Marines, or whether you ally in Sisters and Guard and all the sorts, and Grey Knights and all the sorts of really strong allies they already have. This just is a force multiplier. The book itself, I would say, is a great book to pick up if you can manage to get a copy.
It's a bargain by comparative standards to other releases recently.
Absolutely. And let's be honest, I think it's fair to say most people have a Space Marine army kicking about somewhere, or have. So I see a lot of people getting use out of this in one way or another.
Yeah, and I think in terms of a more holistic kind of viewpoint with predictions, I think with that prevalence of now the Feel No Pain getting even better, people are going to have to start taking in a lot of strength out AP3. I said it with Tau. I said that battle suits were demanding strength out AP3. That's going to need to people like just the humble missile launcher is going to become a lot better when Marines are kicking it with 3-up FNPs. Just running around with just enough ECM, just giving them a 3-up FNP. So see how we go, guys.
All right, excellent.
I'm going to break out my silencers.
We'll see the Grey Knights making a comeback.
I'll try.
All right, guys, I think that's everything covered. So thanks, Shawn and Jeremy.
My nose is cleared up a bit, guys, so thank you very much for your patience.
See
you on the next video.
See you later.
Thanks, guys. See ya.